Southern Fried True Crime covers cases that are not suitable for young listeners, and there may also be some explicit language used. Listener discretion is advised. A marriage is a promise to have and to hold, to honor and to cherish. It's a commitment made in front of your family, your friends, and maybe your God to support your spouse, no matter what trials may come your way. And this was true on the day that 25-year-old Lindsey Nicole Pilkington married 31-year-old Jason Don Lee. They held each other's hands meaningfully as their wedding officiant spoke these words. "These are the hands of your best friend, young and strong, and full of love for you. These are the hands that will hold you when fear and grief temporarily comes your way. But sometimes promises must be broken. Sometimes our relationship suffers under the unbearable weight of a fear or grief, or of course, a betrayal. But sometimes we just drift apart. It's no one's fault. We just aren't in love anymore. At least one of us isn't. And when a promise must be broken, when divorce has to happen, it can be joyful in a way, a rebirth. Usually, all parties can recover. Usually, with the help of time and clarity, we can mend our broken hearts and move on with our lives. Usually, but not always. Welcome to episode 184, The Murder of Lindsey Lee. Nights in the beautiful Midlands of South Carolina are cool during the spring months. You'll get beautiful days in the 70s, but the temperature won't dip much further than the mid-40s after dark. On Monday, March 13, 2017, 31-year-old Lindsey Nicole Lee was headed to her home in West Columbia, South Carolina, a small city that is a suburb of Lexington County, next door to the state capital of Columbia. She had had a long day as she headed home in the darkness at around 8:30 p.m. That morning, Lindsey had gone to her job as an IT specialist at the Lexington County Sheriff's Department. After that, she had hit the gym for her regular martial arts class. And then she had stopped by Walmart to pick up some groceries. As she pulled into the driveway of her quaint 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home on Haleywood Lane, I'm sure she was relieved to be winding down. Finally, she could kick off her shoes and relax. Maybe throw something on TV or read a book. But just as she opened her front door with her plastic grocery bags in hand, Lindsey was ambushed and brutally attacked. The next day, on Tuesday, March 14th, the other employees of the Lexington County Sheriff's Department rolled in one by one. They all knew Lindsey and liked her a lot. She was a talkative, pleasant woman. And so most of her coworkers noticed that Lindsey, a cheerful presence in a typical humdrum office, was absent. This was out of character for Lindsey. She was their resident fitness enthusiast and an early bird. She always worked out in the morning, and she was always one of the first people in the building. But not that day. Concerned, Lindsey's coworkers, who were also her friends, texted her cell phone. No response. Next, they called, but she didn't pick up. Slowly but surely, the LCSD staff members were upgrading their status as generally concerned to really, really worried. Where was Lindsey? Was she okay? Had something happened? They soon called a deputy who was patrolling near Lindsey's house and asked him to do a welfare check, telling themselves it was probably nothing, but wanting to be sure. The deputy in question was named Shannon Lovell. He was a friend of Lindsey's. He also knew Lindsey's soon-to-be ex-husband, Jason. So Deputy Lovell made his way to Lindsey's house. By this time, it was about 10 in the morning. He knocked on the front door, but no one answered. Then he went around back to Lindsey's rear entrance, and that's when he saw something suspicious. The back door was damaged. The wood was badly splintered, as if someone had forced their way into Lindsey's home. Right away, Deputy Lovell called for backup. When his partner arrived, the two officers carefully entered Lindsey's house. Later, Deputy Lovell would tell Discovery ID's American Monster, "I had no idea what I was going to find." Shortly after walking into Lindsey's house, Deputy Lovell heard water running coming from upstairs. He and his partner took the stairs to Lindsey's bathroom, where the shower curtain was pulled shut across the tub. Dreading what they would find, they were still shocked when they pulled the shower curtain back. They found their friend and colleague, Lindsey Lee. She was lying in the bathtub, posed in what the police would later report was a coffin-like manner. She had a 6-inch incision across her throat, and she was dead. Lindsey Nicole Pilkington was born in September of 1985 to her mother, Debbie Cothran, and her father, Steve Pilkington, in Arkansas. When Lindsey was born, it was a big event. According to her mom, Debbie, she was the first grandchild and the first great-grandchild for the family. So the entire Pilkington clan showed up to welcome little 7-pound, 8-ounce Lindsey into the world. Her father, Steve, told Discovery ID it was a family affair, for sure. Everybody was there. Everybody was happy. Lindsey's paternal grandpa videoed the delighted family members who were present for her birth. In the recordings, you can see the hospital where smiling family members hold baby Lindsey. Her mother, Debbie, gazes at her lovingly. Her father, Steve, is glowing with pride. At one point, Grandpa zooms in on baby Lindsey's adorable face, and he says with pride, "Aw, she's going to be quite cute." In 1990, when Lindsey was 5 years old, she gained a new family member, Carista. And Carista is the first to say that Lindsey struggled to accept her as a little sister. After all, Lindsey was used to being the center of attention. She was a charmer, a performer even. She loved smiling for the camera, showing off her dance moves, and making her family laugh. She was such a cute little girl with a bouncy brown ponytail swinging in every video, and her large blue eyes framed by a smattering of freckles. She would keep that characteristic ponytail most of her life. Like many firstborns, it was hard at first for Lindsey to share the spotlight with her new baby sister. But she soon came around, and the two sisters became very close. Lindsey was always there to help Carista whenever she needed her. And Carista followed her big sister around like a puppy dog, whether Lindsey wanted her to or not. But that's how siblings are. Carista wanted to be just like her well-spoken, magnetic big sister. She told Discovery ID, "I always wanted to play with her. She took up rollerblading, so I wanted to rollerblade. She learned how to ride a bike, so I wanted to learn how to ride a bike." As adults, Carista's admiration for her charismatic older sister never wavered. Lindsey and Carista spent their earliest years in Heber Springs, Arkansas. But when Steve realized that job prospects were slim in the rural town, he joined the military. He completed his basic training in 1987 when Lindsey was 2. And after that, the Pilkington family moved around a lot for Steve's military career. First, they went to California. That was a big change from the teeny-tiny town of Heber Springs. Steve told Discovery ID, "You couldn't get any further away from home." Which would become an understatement, because in 1994, 9-year-old Lindsey and her family moved to Wiesbaden, Germany. Next was Odenton, Maryland, and following that, the family finally settled in South Carolina. Moving around so much forced Lindsey to mature quickly. She had to understand big-picture problems fast. And moving around so much also made Lindsey, who was friendly to begin with, an especially talented conversationalist. She knew that no matter where she was in the world, being able to chat so easily would help her fit in quickly. Lindsey was also a great student. She got straight A's without much fuss and never had any behavioral struggles that her parents worried about. Among her friends and family, Lindsey was known for her quick wit, love for numbers, and sparkling personality. Her only struggle during high school was one that many of us know and empathize with: her weight. Lindsey had a complicated relationship with food. And in high school specifically, she often expressed to her mother, Debbie, that she was dissatisfied with her body. Throughout the process of researching this episode, I've looked at a lot of photos of Lindsey. She was, of course, beautiful at all sizes. But the reality of the world is, on occasion, many of us don't like how we look. And that's how Lindsey felt sometimes. It's normal. It's human. And I'm not bringing this up just to give you a mental picture of Lindsey's looks. It's relevant. You'll see. In the early 2000s, Lindsey attended Midlands Technical College in Columbia, South Carolina. She made the scholars list for her outstanding GPA in 2004. By 2008, she was working at a bank in Lexington County. One afternoon, 23-year-old Lindsey was at her job at the bank when a tall, blonde-haired and blue-eyed locksmith came in to fix a broken vault. This was 29-year-old Jason Don Lee, and he, like Lindsey, was also a charmer. The moment Lindsey and Jason spoke to each other, there was a connection. Almost immediately, he asked Lindsey out on a date, and the two soon became inseparable. After dating for a while, Jason took Lindsey out on a boat during sunset one night, supposedly to watch the dolphins. But soon he got down on one knee and popped the question. Lindsey, elated, said yes, and her family was so happy for her. Her sister Carissa told Discovery ID, "I really liked him. Very nice, very funny guy." And Lindsey's mother Debbie felt the same. She appreciated how handy Jason was. If Debbie's car was acting up, she could call Jason to take a look under the hood. He was stable, sweet, and he only had eyes for Lindsey. They seemed to be perfect for each other. They had the same interests and a go-go-go mentality. Lindsey and Jason married in 2010. Their wedding was beautiful. As she walked down the aisle in her stunning white dress, Jason cried big, messy tears. Lindsey's family would tease him about it for ages. Lindsey's father, Steve, told Discovery ID it meant a lot to see that he really cared for her and things were going to be good. It really did seem like a strong match. Lindsey and Jason were both fun, joyful people. During their wedding, Jason's best man spoke about how notoriously clumsy Jason was. Lindsey grinned from ear to ear when the best man handed her a first aid kit as a lighthearted joke gift. Lindsey's sister Carissa recalled that both Lindsey and Jason were doers. They liked to be out and about, experiencing everything the world had to offer, and they loved doing it together. But sometimes, all of Lindsey and Jason's doing didn't leave much time for the boring parts of life, like cleaning, exercising, and eating healthy. For a long time, Lindsey and Jason weren't motivated to do those things. They were doing what made them happy and didn't worry about the boring stuff. But at some point, this lifestyle became a point of contention between Lindsey and Jason. They would accuse each other of being lazy. They were spending a lot of money on eating out, and both of their weights were increasing to a point which made them uncomfortable. 4 years after Lindsey and Jason were married in 2014, Jason joined a gym. He was ready to change his ways, get in shape, and feel better. He started working out with a trainer named Hockley. Jason tried to get Lindsey to go see Graham too. According to Graham, Jason was worried about Lindsey's weight. He wanted her to feel better for her, but also, according to Graham, Jason wanted Lindsey to be skinnier. Despite what he often said, it seems like Jason might have wanted Lindsey to start working out for him, not for her. Regardless, in 2015, about a year after Jason started working out, Lindsey agreed to try a session. She had seen all the progress Jason had made, and she wanted that for herself too. So she met Jason's trainer, Graham. And initially, she wasn't a fan. Graham was British, straightforward, and very pushy. He forced Lindsey to work hard, and Lindsey, who was a newbie to fitness, didn't appreciate Graham's tough love. But over time, she began getting stronger. The workouts weren't quite so hard anymore. And one day, she discovered she didn't dislike Graham anymore either. During their training sessions, they would talk about more than just working out. They discussed their lives, their goals. Somewhere along the way, Graham became more than Lindsey's trainer. He became her close friend. Eventually, Graham convinced Lindsey and Jason to try martial arts, specifically Judo, which focuses on grappling and throwing tactics to keep your opponent off balance. Lindsey and Jason began training heavily in Judo. And for Lindsey, Judo felt like the answer to all of her fitness goals. The sport really accessed her drive and determination. The cause and effect became so clear to her. work hard at judo, follow a healthy diet, and the results would happen. And results did happen for Lindsey. In about a year, she lost over 100 pounds. She looked completely different. And I'm sure she felt completely different. Lindsey was no longer reluctant to go to the gym, fitness classes, and judo training with Graham. Now she loved it, and nothing was going to stop her from continuing on this new exciting fitness journey. Lindsey's gym even featured her weight loss story in their advertisements. They proudly showed her before and after photos. Her mother, Debbie, told Discovery ID, "You could see her self-esteem just getting higher and higher. She was coming into her own." And Lindsey's father, Steve, said, "You couldn't convince her to eat or drink anything that wasn't on her diet. She was focused." If you're listening to this and tempted to think, "Wow, I should get into judo and change my life," or if you're feeling bad because this sounds awful to you, I gently encourage you not to think that way. This journey worked for Lindsey, and maybe a martial arts class would interest you too. I don't know. I'm not you, and I'm not your doctor. But this is just a friendly reminder that Lindsey's fitness journey doesn't have to be yours. And more importantly, you can be happy in your body just the way it is. After training with Graham, Lindsey entered several local judo competitions, and she did really well. She won a high-ranking award in one tournament called the Ken Tamai Memorial Judo Championship. All of this success in judo and her health made Lindsey feel amazing. She was confident and more assured in her decision-making, even beyond fitness and health. Suddenly, Lindsey knew what she wanted from her life, and she wasn't going to compromise. As Lindsey was becoming more secure in who she was, both physically and emotionally, Jason seemed to be going in the opposite direction. He had stopped working out, and he wanted Lindsey to stop too. And that was in part because Jason started feeling threatened by Lindsey and her trainer, Graham. According to Lindsey's sister, Jason believed Lindsey and Graham were having an affair. And for clarity, we'll nip that in the bud right now. There was no evidence that Lindsey cheated on Jason. But that's what Jason thought. And once he started thinking it, it was probably hard for him to stop. Lindsey was still going to Graham's fitness classes and training sessions, and she wasn't going to stop. And it is true that Lindsey and Graham were very good friends. Graham was practically a part of Lindsey's family. He would come to holiday gatherings and her house parties. Her mom met Graham. They were two peas in a pod. But Jason couldn't understand that that was all they were, just friends. And to add just one more stressor into Lindsey and Jason's straining relationship, Jason had changed his mind on a big relationship decision: children. When Lindsey and Jason were first married, they both agreed that they didn't want children. They both felt that kids were not for them, and there's nothing wrong with that, unless one partner changes their mind. Lindsey still didn't want kids, but for unknown reasons, Jason now did. Their inability to see eye to eye on having children became a point of contention for the married couple. So with all of these factors weighing on Lindsey's mind, she made the difficult decision to ask Jason for a divorce. They had been married for 6 years. Lindsey was now ready to move on. But Jason wasn't. He was very upset by Lindsey's decision. According to his friend, Deputy Shannon Lovell, the one who would find Lindsey's body, Jason said he didn't understand where the divorce was coming from. And honestly, Jason's inability to understand that Lindsey was unhappy, given all we know about their relationship, was probably part of the problem. But that's just speculation on my part. Lindsey and Jason were officially separated in April of 2016, and she moved in with her mom. Jason moved 2 hours away to an apartment in Simpsonville, South Carolina. He had found a new locksmith job in Greenville, South Carolina, which was only a short drive from his new apartment. Greenville was supposed to be a new beginning for Jason, put some space between him and Lindsey and the memories of their old town. According to Lindsey's family and friends, she'd given them all the impression that she and Jason were on good terms, that the breakup was amicable, and it seemed like their actions showed that. For example, Jason said he didn't want to deal with the hassle of his and Lindsey's marital home. He told Lindsey she could have it. Then, Lindsey decided she was going to fix the place up and sell it. That was a great financial decision for her. She was going to make somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000 profit on the 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. At first, Jason seemed supportive of Lindsey's decision to sell the house. He even helped her remodel the upstairs bathroom. Everyone thought Lindsey and Jason's divorce was going as well as it possibly could have. Jason was dating a different woman. Lindsey's Facebook relationship status was set to separated. And around February of 2017, Lindsey freshened up her hair color and style. I'm not sure if she felt like it was a rite of passage, but I'd like to think of it that way. Many women change their hair or appearance in some way after a breakup. She was moving on, preparing herself for the next stage of her adventure. Lindsey and Jason finalized the day for their divorce. It was going to happen in April of 2017. So, when Lindsey wasn't at work on Tuesday, March 14th of 2017, everyone was surprised. And when Deputy Shannon Lovell found her body in the upstairs bathroom of her home, they were flabbergasted. No one could have predicted this. Lindsey's parents were overcome with grief. This level of violence was extremely traumatic in and of itself, apart from just normal grief. Lindsey's father, Steve, said he had to hear the news from his boss. And, quote, I just couldn't wrap my head around what happened and why. Her mother, Debbie, told Discovery ID that upon hearing the news, she screamed and cried. She didn't believe that her eldest daughter was actually gone. She said, "It's not okay. It's never going to be okay." Since Lindsey worked at the Lexington County Sheriff's Department, they couldn't investigate her murder. It would have been a conflict of interest. Lindsey's close friend, Lieutenant Alan Sexton, told Discovery ID, "I couldn't be the best detective for her. I couldn't help, and that's hard." As a result, SLED took over the case. SLED is the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division. It's a state-level organization that I've discussed many times on this show before, for better or for worse. Better in this case. Of course, the first thing SLED did was talk to Lindsey's estranged husband, Jason. They found him at the locksmith store in Greenville County. According to reporter Caroline Hecker, Jason was stunned to see the police. Right away, he asked what was wrong, and as he learned of Lindsey's violent death, Jason began crying. After his tears subsided, Jason went to the police station at the SLED agent's request. And that's when, unprompted, he began explaining where he was the night Lindsey was killed. He said he had recently suffered a fairly serious foot injury while on the job. On Monday night, March 13th, his foot was killing him. So, he said he had taken some strong pain meds and gone to bed. When he woke up the next morning, he noticed his car was missing. But that didn't really surprise him. Jason explained to the officers that he was behind on his car payments. He just figured the vehicle had been repossessed. But the point of the story here was, Jason was saying he had no way to get to Lindsey's house. The interviewing lieutenant asked Jason about some scratch marks he had on his face. But Jason had an explanation for that too. Apparently, he had cut himself while dry shaving. Then Jason agreed to provide a DNA sample. Back at the crime scene, investigators were searching Lindsey's house for any clues that might lead to her killer. And there were quite a few. First off, it was clear that a struggle had occurred in Lindsey's foyer near her front door. Groceries were spilled everywhere, which makes sense, since Lindsey was at Walmart only a half hour before she arrived home. The investigators verified that through her time-stamped receipt. Lindsey's attacker must have struck just as she entered the house. Next, law enforcement agents pulled the security footage from Walmart. They saw Lindsey, clear as day, walking around the vegetables and fruit aisles with her handheld shopping basket. She looked calm, no furtive glances over her shoulder or otherwise weird behavior. But this local Walmart became very important because investigators received an odd tip from a patrol officer. The day after Lindsey was killed on Tuesday, March 14th, a man, matching Jason's description, had an altercation with this officer. The man who looked like Jason was upset at how close the officer was to his car. and the patrol officer remembered that this angry man had a big scratch across his cheek. Now the investigators were focused on Jason. When the detectives ran this Jason's doppelganger's vehicle's plates, they discovered it was indeed registered to Jason Lee himself. Something was clearly wrong. How could Jason have been angrily shooing a police officer away from his car when he had claimed it had been repossessed recently? Unless his car had not been repossessed at all, and instead he had been caught red-handed lying to the police. As the detectives started to pull the threads of Jason's story, they unraveled more and more. In light of this new information, the SLED agents carefully combed through Walmart's parking lot security footage. And on Tuesday, March 14th at 5:17 a.m., they saw Jason's vehicle park. A figure who looked like Jason exited the vehicle. It's dark, and this area of the parking lot isn't well lit, so it's hard to be certain it's him. But it almost certainly is him. Additionally, other surveillance footage and CCTV caught this Jason-looking figure walking in the direction of his apartment. He crossed multiple business parking lots, so there was a lot of video evidence. 50 minutes later, Jason's work truck appeared next to his vehicle in the Walmart parking lot, as if Jason had gone to a different location where he had planted his work truck, grabbed the truck, and then took it to his personal vehicle. The work truck stayed parked next to Jason's personal vehicle for 4 minutes. Later, detectives would suggest that this is when Jason moved the murder weapon from his personal vehicle to his work vehicle. But that's never been proven, and the murder weapon was never found. Additionally, the security cameras inside Walmart caught Jason buying groceries the night that Lindsey was killed. So let's take stock. Even if we give the mysterious dark figure that matches Jason's exact height and weight the benefit of the doubt, even if we say, hey, maybe that's not Jason moving Jason's personal vehicle, work vehicle, and walking towards Jason's apartment along the very route where he would have stashed his work truck. Well, there was Jason, plain as day, buying groceries in Walmart during the exact time he told SLED agents he was at home, asleep, and on pain medication for his foot. Jason had lied to the police twice so far. What else was he lying about? The investigators obtained a search warrant for his apartment, and that's how the SLED agents found damning evidence. Inside his apartment was a box of blue latex gloves, surgical gloves, or the kind you would wear to avoid leaving fingerprints. They were stored in a backpack. Back at Lindsey's house in the foyer where she had been attacked, the authorities had recovered 3 dime-sized pieces of blue latex. And they were covered in both Lindsey and Jason's DNA. So much of Jason's DNA was on the gloves that an expert would later testify that he was probably wearing them. On March 17, 2017, 3 days after Lindsey's body was found, 38-year-old Jason Don Lee was arrested by SLED. He was charged with first-degree murder and first-degree burglary. He was held without bond at the Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center in Richland County. And if convicted, Jason could have faced life in prison or even the death penalty. The news of Jason's arrest astonished Lindsey's family. Her mother, Debbie, said, "We did not see this coming. They had broken bread with this man, exchanged Christmas presents. Jason's betrayal was unfathomable and unforgivable." But he wouldn't admit his wrongdoing. He claimed he was innocent, and he maintained that claim all the way into his trial. Meanwhile, Lindsey's funeral was held on Sunday, March 19th at the Kaufman-Harmon Funeral Home in Lexington. Jason Lee's trial was held in Lexington County and took place in November of 2019. The prosecution posited that he had broken into Lindsey's house when he knew she would be away. He broke the back door to make sure it looked like an assailant had to force their way in. Then, using his locksmithing ability, or maybe his key if Lindsey hadn't changed the locks yet, that was unclear, he entered her home. As soon as Lindsey arrived from Walmart, Jason overpowered her. He slammed her against the front door. Then he strangled her until she passed out, put her in the bathtub, and cut her throat. However, from the deep defensive wounds on Lindsey's hands, It was clear she had woken in the tub and fought desperately for her life. After Jason killed Lindsey, the state alleged that he planted a bag of marijuana in her car. He wanted to make her death appear to be a drug deal gone wrong. But according to Lindsey's friends and family, she was not a drug user. The medical examiner, Dr. Janice Ross, testified and agreed with the state's version of events. She found bruising on Lindsey's hands, arms, neck, back, and head. Notably, Lindsey had fingerprint bruises on the back of her left shoulder. When prompted by the prosecutor, Ross agreed that that was consistent with someone wrapping their arm around Lindsey's neck and holding her in place. According to Dr. Ross's best assessment, Lindsey had been strangled until she passed out, beaten, and cut across the neck with a sharp object. Her cause of death was blood loss due to the 6-inch incision on her throat. So why would Jason kill Lindsey, his almost ex-wife who appeared to be on good terms with him? The state suggested that Jason couldn't let Lindsey go, that he had never wanted their relationship to end. And, to add insult to injury, Jason was bitter. Lindsey was doing well financially. She was going to make tens of thousands off the sale of their marital home. Even though it was his idea, it was probably an idea that had backfired on him. Meanwhile, Jason was floundering. As I said before, he was behind on car payments, but that was just the beginning of his money troubles. The state demonstrated that Jason had less than $100 to his name when he was arrested. He had maxed out his credit card. He was going to be evicted from his apartment, and he even owed Lindsey $1,300. Jason had been ordered by the court to pay her back by April 1st of 2017, less than a month after she was murdered. And according to Jason's co-worker's court testimony, Lindsey was going to put Jason in jail if he didn't pay her. During the trial, it was revealed that Jason had also changed Lindsey's name in his phone to Hungry Money. So obviously, this divorce was not as amicable as Jason had wanted people to think. And maybe Lindsey too. She hid the uglier parts from her family and just kept her head down as she tried to get through it. Jason also had a girlfriend around this time, and he had complained to her at length. He had whined about how unfair it was that Lindsey got the house. Never mind that he had offered Lindsey the house. But on the day Lindsey was murdered, Jason had suddenly changed his tune to his girlfriend. According to the girlfriend's court testimony, he said that his financial struggles were over. He was going to get the house. The girlfriend said she had no idea how. That night, Jason had called her. He said his foot hurt badly and that he was going to go home, take some meds, and hit the hay. This seemed a little strange to the girlfriend. She had never seen Jason take pain medication before. He just wasn't the type. But maybe Jason's foot was in excruciating pain, so bad that he had to take the prescribed meds. But, according to Jason's co-worker's testimony, Jason hadn't looked like he was in pain the Monday morning before Lindsey was murdered. He didn't complain, he didn't limp. He seemed just fine. The next day, when Lindsey's body was found, Jason's co-workers had asked him about his newly scratched face. Jason, who had told the investigators that he cut himself shaving, told his co-workers that his cat had scratched him. SLED agents and other experts testified that Jason's Fitbit also held important data. Based on the information, Jason wore his Fitbit religiously. But during the times that he would have had to travel to and from Lindsey's home if he killed her, the Fitbit was mysteriously turned off. The data from Jason's work van GPS also indicated that he had traveled to and from Lindsey's home. And there's more. Jason had deleted his call records from January 14th to March 14th, the day when Lindsey's body was discovered. He had also deleted his web search history on March 15th. But experts were able to recover some of his search queries. They included how to reset passwords, criminal defense attorneys, an obituary website, and news articles related to Lindsey's death. And the day Lindsey's body was discovered, Jason had called their tax prep consultant that they had hired when they were married. He asked if their tax refund could be transferred to his account. It's unclear if the police had told Jason about Lindsey's death at the time he had made this call, so it's undeniably suspicious. Why else would he suddenly be entitled to their joint refund? Graham Hockley, the fitness trainer who was good friends with Lindsey, also testified. He explained he and Lindsey were best friends and that he was her personal trainer, nothing more. Graham was likely the last person to have seen Lindsey alive, as she had worked out with him before going to Walmart the night she died. Graham told the jury that he wished he had taught Lindsey more self-defense moves. He said tearfully, "If I had taught her, she might have had a chance. We talked about it, but we didn't actually get to it. I didn't think she needed it, to be fair." Jason's defense team argued that he didn't do it. They explained that no items in Jason's apartment, work van, or personal car tested positive for blood. And the gloves that investigators found in Jason's home, well, those could be used for hunting. Jason himself didn't testify, and his defense team didn't put anyone else on the stand. Bluntly put, they didn't put on a case at all. They just cross-examined state witnesses without calling any of their own. And so on November 22, 2019, after deliberating for a mere 62 minutes, the jury convicted the now 40-year-old Jason Lee of murdering his estranged wife, 31-year-old Lindsey Nicole Lee. He was also convicted of first-degree burglary. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Before Jason was carted off to jail, he stood and said the following: "The only thing I have to say is I didn't do it, and I will be appealing this, and I will be coming back on appeal. I did not murder Lindsey Lee, and I want that on the record. I am an innocent man. I did not murder her, and I will prove my innocence, and I don't care if it takes 20 years, I will prove my innocence." Today, Lindsey's friends and family have started the Lindsey Pilkington Memorial Foundation. Their mission is to empower women. They offer scholarship opportunities, mental health services, and self-defense training for women. Alan Sexton is a former lieutenant for the Lexington County Sheriff's Department and a friend of Lindsey's. He is now the CEO of the Lindsey Pilkington Memorial Foundation. He told WIS-TV News, "She was something that was unstoppable, and when she set her mind to something, it was going to get taken care of. Whether it be working on computers at the Sheriff's Department, whether it be her fitness, she was serious about those things, and she always put her mind to it and took care of other people before she would take care of herself." Jason is currently incarcerated in the Broad River, South Carolina Department of Corrections. As of 2020, he maintains his innocence, but he has yet to appeal. When I first read about this case, I was worried the press or others might have tried to blame Lindsey. You see, I covered a case back in early 2019 that felt similar. Episode number 37, the Heather Palumbo Jones case. She had gone on a weight loss journey also, and then was murdered by her jealous, soon-to-be ex-husband. Heather, like Lindsey, had decided to go on a journey to change her life, not just lose weight. She wanted to feel better, not just look better. But when she was murdered, headlines screamed that she was killed for weight loss. Her own friends went on talk shows and said things like, if she hadn't lost the weight, she would still be alive. But thankfully, Lindsey's case was several years after Heather's, and we have come a long way when discussing weight loss. No one blamed Lindsey for wanting to get healthy and change her life. The only problem was that changing her life included leaving her husband. On the outside, they seemed to be a happy couple. But life is never really how it looks. What may have seemed like a sudden decision on Lindsey's part had actually been stewing for a while. She was just the one to pull off the Band-Aid and separate first. If Jason was jealous, it wasn't about Lindsey's weight, and it wasn't just about Graham. I wonder if he told her she could have the house and sell it, hoping she would see him as not just generous, but independent himself. Helping her remodel seemed to be a way to stay close to her without making her feel smothered. And it would seem as though he did fool her, except that he borrowed money from her, and she wasn't playing around about that. They were getting a divorce, he owed her the money, and that was that. Lindsey had drawn clear boundaries in all aspects of their divorce. Maybe that was the trigger for Jason. After everything he had done to try and woo Lindsey back, she had the court ordering him to repay a loan she had given him. He then cruelly snuffed out her young life, and he was viciously angry about it. It was a personal murder. He strangled and beat her before cutting her throat. You don't murder someone with that much violence without rage. I'm sure jealousy and a sense of desertion played into Jason's savage thoughts, but in the end, it seems like all he cared about was the money. But that's the second oldest reason to murder someone, after love. Whatever his motive, Jason's murderous jealousy is a tale as old as time. Southern Fried True Crime is hosted and produced by me, Erica Kelley. Today's episode was researched and written by Andrea Marshbank, with additional writing by myself, and of course, all editorial opinions are my own. Southern Fried's original music is by Rob Harrison of Gamma Radio, and the original graphic art is by Coley Horner. Today's episode was edited and mixed by Brandon Schexnayder of Southern Gothic and Erica Kelley. Thank you to Jennefer, an anonymous sender, and others for suggesting Lindsey's case. If you have any case suggestions, please go to my website and click on the Listener Suggestion tab or email sftcresearch@gmail.com. You'll get lost in a sea of emails if you send it to my main address. So this is the best way for me to get those little-known cases y'all always send me. Please remember that I do not accept suggestions on social media private messages. With 3 platforms to manage, that is very overwhelming for me. I hope you understand. But please come join our Facebook group, Southern Fried True Crime Fans Discussion Group, where we swap recipes, worship Dolly Parton, and share memes. I much prefer spending my social media time in our lovely group. We do, of course, discuss true crime, not just Southern Fried, but all kinds, but it is still very much a Southern lifestyle group. Our group is a safe and fun corner of Facebook, and by God, we mean it when we say no shit asses allowed. It's not just a motto, it's how we run the group. If you enjoyed today's show, don't forget to subscribe and please tell a friend or rate and review on iTunes. I'm also on all large platforms like iHeart, Spotify, Amazon, Audible, and YouTube. Until next time, thanks so much for listening. Y'all take care.